Welcome to Parentless Podcast. Please note that in this show you may hear graphic descriptions or language that may not be appropriate for everyone. Listener discretion advised. Hey there, welcome to episode 23 of Parentless Podcast. Today I am talking with Cindy McIntyre. She is an author and a teacher, and she lives in Missouri, which is right close to my home state of Kansas, which was kind of one of the reasons why I reached out to her. So, secret there, if you live in the Midwest, you might hear from me. Okay, so for Cindy's episode, what we're going to do is I did not do a lot of editing this time. I just left in a lot of our natural conversation. I thought it might be fun to kind of see what happens really during an interview. A lot of the other episodes I have edited quite heavily to take out some of the oddball things that I say, because I don't think you need to hear all of those. And so that is what we did here. This is also episode number 1 of 2 episodes with my interview with Cindy. So that's a special treat as well. Both of those episodes will be out today. If you haven't listened to episode 12, It's Like an Island, featuring Louisa Velarde, you really need to hear this episode. She's totally superwoman. She is a mom. She's a photographer, a freelance writer. She writes plays. I believe she directs plays as well. She's got some stuff out right now. You should probably Google her, Louisa Velarde. Definitely check that out. Her episode, she said, it's like an island. And I totally agree with that. Being parentless is like an island, and we're on this island, but we are here and we are here together. So with you, I can do this even though I don't know how to swim. So thank you all for being here with me on this island. I'm sorry you're here, but I'm glad we're here together. If you can't get enough of Parentless Podcast, another place you can go is www.patreon.com/Parentless Podcast. And on this page right now, I have open to everyone to see. You don't have to donate to the show to see this. Everyone can see it that goes to the page. You will see like video outtakes from the interviews, and I try to include information that was not in the original episode. So this is basically bonus material, and seeing the interview is pretty awesome too. It's always nice to put a face to a name. So if you're interested, please check that out. And as always, thank you for everything, all of your support for Parentless Podcast.
This is a fact production of City.
That makes me sad comes and goes by. Could wrote the book of Joe instead. Oh, to go now. Heavy I so help me make this bed over and over. Tell me what it takes to make you stay.
Well, I'm Cindy McIntyre, and I am from the Missouri area. So the Show Me State, or the Ozarks that people like to make fun of sometimes. And I actually lost my mother when I was 29, very unexpectedly. She had a stroke around Thanksgiving, and it was very devastating. And her dying right before Christmas really kind of makes holidays pretty tough. And my way of dealing with grief was kind of a private thing for me. So I kind of turned to writing and kind of kept that private as well for a while. And after her death, I think I took care of my dad instead of taking care of my grief. And for a long time, I put grief on the back burner, caring for him. And after he died, I remember at the gravesite, the minister saying, does anybody have anything to say? And I thought, I do, but I can't say it out loud. But I'm going to say it in a book someday. And I thought, I don't know when that someday is going to be. And I remember going home and thinking, I don't have it in me. Nobody's going to be interested in reading anything I have to say, but maybe I should just keep writing anyway. So I wrote Dear Mom letters, Dear Dad letters, poetry, pouring my heart out, because I was like you, Stephanie, I didn't go to therapy, and that my therapy was writing. And so one day I was cleaning out some of my parents' things, and I actually found this little trinket that was an angel that had belonged to my mom that had been buried in a dresser drawer for over 18 years. And I thought, I don't know if I believe in signs, but I think maybe I do. And I thought, I'm going to sit down and write my book anyway. And even if it's just for family, I think I'll write it and I'll put it out there. And if there are mistakes, if it's not perfect, that's okay. And so I did. And I wrote the book, and then I decided, okay, I did that one. And now I think I'll write one about my dad. And after that, I thought, maybe I can help other people. If I can have the courage to do that and have the courage to stand at 2 funerals, I can probably take on helping others. And so I did that too, and reached out to a grief center to volunteer. And now that led me to writing my first fiction book this past year. And that's where I am now. The other thing I do in my spare time, really have spare time, I have actually been a teacher for 20 years, and I teach at-risk teenagers. So that prepares you for about anything too.
Excellent. Yeah, I would imagine.
That's a little bit about me.
Okay. Well, welcome to Parentless. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to talk to somebody.
Yeah. Have you talked to many people? I know you write, but
no.
Okay.
No,
so
I'm kind of shy, but once I get started, you can't stop me.
That's right. I always joke that I don't like to talk to people, when I'm talking about myself, but you're going to find I'm going to go on probably for 5 minutes.
That's how I am.
At some point. Yeah. Yeah. Well, definitely. I would like to say that I found you on Instagram, and I reached out to you there, and I've started to just kind of, when I reach out, I never know what's going to happen, but if I don't try, then I will never know. So
yes, I remember when you reached, I was so scared. I thought, you can do it. Just try, go and talk to one person and just don't be so afraid. And so I thought, I'm going to do it. I really liked what you had to say. I read some of the things. I listened to a few podcasts. I thought, I like her. I think she's great. So I'm going to talk to her.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So everybody just loves me, can I say?
Yes. I think you should say that. No, you should. No, you had a way of making me feel comfortable. And I thought, I think I can do this. Because usually I'm very, very shy and awkward about my grief. I'm really uncomfortable talking about myself. I can sit, people are like, how do you sit and talk to other people about grief? I said, I guess I've been there, and I can listen to them, and I don't get as emotional because that's not my story. But talking about my own is just horrifying and scary. And I don't know if that's how you feel helping other people. It feels so good to listen to their stories because you can relate. But to talk about it yourself is just, it makes me nervous.
Exactly. And there's been people where I've reached out and they've had podcasts and I think there was a lady who just recently wrote a book, and so I said, would you like to come on over and talk to me? And she said, okay, sure. If you be a guest on my show. And that's where I had to take a step back. And I said, let me think about that. Yeah. And I'm still thinking. It's been several months. So
it is. It's a little scary.
Yeah. Well, good. I'll take some courage from you. And I know that's something that I will be doing later on. But yes, definitely. It is different to sit here and just listen for sure. Again, I just really appreciate you coming here.
Well,
and so before we dive into the stories, give me the names of your books and where we can find them.
Okay. The first book was Eulogies, Unspoken, and all 3 are on Amazon. And the second book was Caring for Dad with Love and Tomatoes. And the fiction book is a YA book. 2 teenagers fall in love at a grief center, and they help each other. And it is called Love at the Center of Grief. And all are on Amazon, other places too, but online retail.
Okay. And you're working on is it a sequel? Is that what we call it?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's called Beyond the Center of Grief. Yes.
Okay. I have to tell you, I was reading I think it was the description about Gretchen and Hayden.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And it took me back to when I was sitting in my room when I was in middle school, whatever. I was reading about these high schoolers, and it was cool because they were older than me. But anyway, it just took me back to that time. And I was like, oh, this is so nice.
Thank you. Yes, I love it because as a teacher, I'm able to kind of draw in some of the communication that they have, and looking at some of the kids at the Grief Center, I'm able to kind of, and also I think grief makes me feel like a little kid sometimes too. I want my mom, and I want to be able to say the things. I don't know if that's how everybody feels as adults, but there are so many times when I feel like a little kid, like I'm lost at camp and nobody's going to come, for me, or so. It's so sad. You just have this lost and lonely feeling, and I just tried to tap my own feelings into what these teenagers probably felt. So when I wrote, I try to tie in how I feel, which is like a kid most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how old were you when your mom died?
I was 29. Yeah. Okay. But I wasn't married and I didn't have any children. I still don't have my own biological children, but I date someone who has children. So I was able to at least have that experience of mothering, people. So that was nice.
Good. I do want to get into that a little bit later. So that's always intriguing to me, that parental aspect as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with, I said we were going to do them together. I don't know, whatever you feel most comfortable with. Let's just start with your mom.
Okay.
And don't let me forget, I do want to know what their names are as well.
Okay.
I've noticed that's one thing that sometimes I ask and sometimes I forget to, and I want to make sure that we definitely honor them. So what was your mom's name?
My mom's name was Nellie and my dad's was John. Yeah.
You were 29 when your mom died, and how old was she?
She was 62 or 3, I believe. She was about to turn, her birthday was that month. And I believe she was going to be turning 63. Yeah.
Okay. So. And what happened with your mom?
It was really odd. She had a headache on Thanksgiving Day, and she said she just didn't feel well. And I remember we enjoyed pecan pie, and I just said, I don't feel very good. And when we went our separate ways, we just thought nothing of it. And I remember we planned to go Black Friday shopping. And the next time I knew, there was a phone call from my dad, and he was frantic, saying that she had collapsed, and he had called the ambulance. And I didn't live that far away in my own apartment, and I rushed over, and they were loading her up, and she survived through the evening. But by the next day, not so much. She had slipped kind of into a coma and kind of lingered for about a week or so, where there was just no hope. It was one of those, you wish, you see signs of little things, the flickering of the eyes, and you think, oh, she's coming around, there's this hope, and there's just not. The doctors come to you and say, oh, there's a 1% chance of survival, and you think, oh, if anybody can do it, my mom can do it. That hope. And she was a person of faith. I mean, almost to a point where she could be like growing up, you thought, oh, my mother's embarrassing. She's kind of religious, one of those types, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I'd rather have a mother that was a great person, because growing up, she had a horrible childhood. She was abused, and there's so many things I wrote about in my book about that, like finding her diary, about so many. She's just an amazing person. And I thought, if anybody can go through all the things that she went through, she can survive this. And it wasn't, and she couldn't, and it just was heartbreaking.
And so you said you found her diaries when you were an adult after she had passed away. So
yes.
Were these things that you knew about before she passed away?
No, I didn't. I did not know that she had written that. It was basically just like a notebook. And, she had talked about it. She had talked about those things that she had experienced. And I knew my grandmother had some problems, some mental illness issues. And I knew that she was pretty rough on her children. But it was just to see my mother's handwriting and to know it was preserved in this notebook. This was actually after my dad had died. All this came about, like finding her notebook and finding all of these little I call them trinkets, like treasures. But it just made me want to sit down and just preserve all of that. And I felt like her story deserved to be told, because here's somebody that broke the cycle of abuse, that rose above all these things to be a great mother. And I had to overcome the anger myself of why did my mom have to die when she was such a great person, and all these other idiots that our mothers get to live. And I didn't understand that, or why people who have mothers treat them so poorly. And I don't know if that's an issue for a lot of people, but for me, I get so angry when I see people mistreat their mothers, or they don't want to have relationships with their mothers. And I think, I'd give anything just to have a day or a conversation or anything with my mom again. And so many people take that for granted, and it drives me crazy. It still does. There's times when I think, it just drives me crazy when people take that for granted.
Yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to know, is if you knew about how your mom grew up while she was still living. Because what I'm finding is that, of course, whatever happens in our parents' lives definitely affects us, even if, number one, we know about it, or if we don't know about it. And then if our parents are in our lives, or if they're not, whether they're, passed away, or they're just not in our lives, like just their lives affect us, I guess. And that's just one of the things that I do think about a lot. So yeah, your mom was able to break that cycle then and be a good mom to you. Mm-hmm. That's definitely impressive.
Yes. I kind of went into psychology in college, and I wrote a little bit about that, the versus nurture. And,
mm-hmm.
I had no answer. I thought, how in the world? And again, for her, it was a spiritual thing. She basically leaned on her faith, and it was all about. So my first book was definitely more of a faith-based, and for me, kind of being angry for quite a while, with God, I guess, about her death, and thinking, that was her God, but I don't know so much it was mine.
Well, if you want to bring it up, let's just do that right now. So yeah. Tell me. So is that now just her God, or do you have?
No, not so much. No, there are days I still get angry, but not so much. No, I think that I actually find comfort in, when I'm having a bad day. I will oftentimes hum some of her hymns, and I've found ways to use some of her old hymnals, or churches that are getting rid of their hymnals. I will take old hymnals and I will turn them into Christmas cards now for other people. And I have tried to find ways to harness the negativity into something positive. So that's the way, I think, after all these years, I'm trying to find ways to take the negative and learn how to turn it into something positive, because there's no reason to hang on to the anger. It doesn't do me any good to do that. Mm-hmm. And I found that helping other people and trying to talk about the happy memories and the fun things, and it basically celebrating their life, is helpful to me more so than just wallowing in the anger and the sadness. It has made me feel so much better. And so I'm happy about that. I think I definitely have faith because I think after finding that angel and feeling almost like it was a sign or a connection, I'm not sure the word, I definitely felt like, even if it was a religious sign, I don't know, but it felt like there was something to that. It really gave me the push I needed to just say, it's time. It's time for me to do. And that's kind of in the dedication, I wrote that. I started out with I forget the Bible verse, but it's the one about, to everything there is a season, a time to be born, a time to die, that one. And it's one of my favorites because it's about rejoicing and going on. And I think it ends with something like, this is my time to dance, and this is my time to live and to try to go on. So That's definitely a paraphrase. That's definitely not how it goes. But
that works. I think we get that one. So you found that angel after your dad passed away. So was that 18 years?
Yeah, it was stuck in that drawer in the corner, wedged for 18 years. And I inherited this dresser. At first, I didn't even want it. We were going to donate it to the Salvation Army.
So you were supposed to have it. See, that's the parts of the stories that I love is that you really were supposed to have it.
It gave me goosebumps to say that again. And I remember the family's like, well, and then I guess the mirror, there's a mirror to one of the matching pieces. And the family called and said, oh, the mirror got a crack today. And I said, and I got really upset. And I'm like, that is an heirloom. Who broke it? And I got upset. I'm like, I'm coming to get it. So then I all of a sudden it was an heirloom and I had to have it. So I found room and I took it. And I guess I was. And that's it. That's just it. Sometimes the things that happen, I guess we are meant to have. And who knows, it must have been a sign. And I write about that. And that's the journey I took. That was in my first book, that this little goofy little pin, it really was not goofy at all. This little angel just set off everything in motion and kind of helped me regain a little bit of faith, and that there is something out there bigger than us that's maybe guiding us, helping us. Who knows? But definitely there's something more to this world. There's connections to people, places, whatever. I'm not sure what it is, but definitely there's something good out there.
So with it being 18 years and you talked about your anger and all of that stuff, and then that angel was your sign. So did you spend a lot of these years being angry? Is that what?
There were moments. I think I would have around a lot of the anniversaries, especially the holidays, I would get really upset. I'm a very visual person, and I can remember seeing all the poinsettias at the holidays, and everybody would always want to decorate with poinsettias, and I would see them and I would just get so sad because that was the flower that decorated her funeral. And I could see that. And she was buried in a purple dress, and I didn't wear purple for the longest time because she was buried in purple. And I know that sounds so weird. I don't know if anybody else has ever experienced that. But I had this connection to the color purple for a while that I thought, that's the death color. I can't connect with that color. And just really odd things. But I really I had no idea what to do. There were times I thought, and maybe that's because I saw everybody else, like my brother and my sisters were married. They had children. Everybody was going on with their life. And I was the youngest and the single one. And because I was available, I took care of my dad. And I don't know, I didn't resent anybody for that. I'm so thankful I got to do that because I got to know my dad. But it's hard. It is hard to take care of someone. But I think there were moments I don't know if anger is the right word or if I don't know if there is a word. We need a word for grief, I guess, because there isn't one. But I remember there was this billboard or whatever, and I got so mad, I called it the Jesus buffet sign because it said something about, what did you give God this Christmas? And I got really angry driving by, and I said, well, I gave you my mother, or something. But I said I called it the all you can eat Jesus buffet sign. And I thought, that's not who I usually am, is this person who says, rude, horrible things about a church, but that's what I called it, the Jesus buffet sign. And so I knew it was things like that I would think about and say just off the wall rude things about. And then I would get upset and think, oh, I'm a bad person, and feel guilty. And I guess that's part of it too. That cycle of, you feel angry, then you have that guilt for feeling angry at people or places. And then I would hear a song, at Christmas about something that she had sang. And then I would get into the depressional anger again, no, that's her God, not mine. But definitely I'm in a different place because of it all. So I'm so glad of that.
Yeah, because of it all. That's interesting. And that's one thing that I find in the stories that I do hear, a lot of time, even, for those of us who haven't written books or started a project or done anything like that, we're still like, everybody that I've talked to is going on as best they can, and sometimes that's what you can do. And so, yeah, I think just because of the things that have happened to us, then that's where we are and who we are, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. I find it interesting about the poinsettias and, the color purple. But when you hear, the gospel music, does that makes you happy and you have a happy memory?
It's that happy, sad,
Okay.
And you'll probably know exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
Everybody does. It connects me to her like nothing else does. Like I can be having just a really rough day and I can hum one of the songs that she used to sing or something, and it relaxes me, or it makes me just feel at ease. It gives me a connection to her to do that. And I remember when she was in the hospital, that's what I did is I just sang to her at her bedside, and that was so hard to do. But those are the things that I'll probably always remember is her singing, probably her music, and just those little things, probably her faith. Like I said, her faith is probably what really stands out to me is her incredible journey in life. That's what I want to celebrate about her, is her ability to just overcome the things that she did in life and to be a good person like she was.
Yeah. I'm so happy to hear that she was a good mom for you.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that she would be proud to hear that as well.
Thank you. Yeah. That's so good to hear. That's the thing I think I worry about the most is, am I living a decent enough life and doing the things I should? And then I think, I think she would be. And it makes you sad. Every time there's something good, there's that twinge of sadness because you want to run and call. That's the first person you want to still call. And again, you have that little kid moment where, guess what I'm doing today? Guess what I did? I have an issue where I still, after all these years, I still cannot go to the cemetery and spend that much time. I don't get a lot of, I don't know what you'd want to call it. I just don't feel a connection there. And thankfully I have reached out. Like there's some online grief support groups that I do talk to people on, and I'm not alone there. And that feels good to know that there's other people that prefer to journal and talk to their deceased, loved ones in a journal or do it in a different way, that I'm not alone. And my aunt gave me a saying and said, you gave your mom her flowers when she was alive. And that's what mattered. And I loved that. That just made me feel so at ease and so peaceful to know that comforted me, to know that I wasn't just disrespectful, I guess is the word. I always felt like I wasn't being a good daughter by not going to the cemetery and taking flowers and talking to her. But it wasn't that I didn't talk to her, because I wrote, stories about her and I talked to her and I thought about her all the time. But not being able to take flowers did make me feel so, again, kind of angry, guilty, all those things rolled into one. And I'm still there. it sounds so crazy, but I can go to the cemetery, and on occasion I'll drive by, or I might get out of the vehicle and go stand by it, but I'm just not really comfortable. That's just not a place I'm very comfortable at.
Yeah. So this might be one of those times where I go on a little tangent, but, so I lived down maybe a block from the cemetery. And so my dad died when I was very young. So, he was up in that cemetery for years and years and years and years. And, we would go sometimes or whatever, but that's just because my mom was going. So I would go. But then eventually, I think it was after, I don't know if it was after my mom passed away. Probably it was, I was trying to And then we actually ended up living in my childhood home. So it was the same home right down the street from the cemetery. And I took my kids up there a couple of times, but the first time I went, after it had been so long, I could not find the headstone. And that was the worst I had felt in a cemetery, like ever, like even just, being there didn't make me feel that uncomfortable, but it was like, oh, like what kind of daughter am I that I can't remember where this headstone is? Like, so I felt really bad about that. So I get it. I get what you mean. That is interesting. I'm glad to know that there are other people that don't go. And now we've moved out of state. So, I mean, I'm probably never going to, maybe if I go back, I might visit, but
there is an online website that allows you to look at it and view it online. I don't know if people know that. Find a gravesite. I
did not. Yeah. Tell me. Find a gravesite.
I think it's called findagravesite.com. And you can, like, if you are uncomfortable going in person, you can view it online and see it. You can see the headstone, see the caption, see their name. And I don't know if that puts anybody at ease, but if anybody is uncomfortable going in person, they can still get a visual of a person's headstone. So that does bring, if it brings comfort to somebody who's out of state and can't go visual, like see it in person, there's still that comfort of being able to see it or view something. So
yeah, that's a great resource. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So hopefully that can help somebody.
I bet it will. One question I don't want to forget was, did your dad ever remarry, or did you have to see him date or anything like that?
There was a moment a few months after my mom died where he made a comment about spending time with some like extended family members, like in a town near us, but he never followed through with anything. No, he never did. In fact, he wore his wedding ring until the day he died. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All those years. He stayed, as far as I know, he stayed faithful. I would not have cared. I don't think we would have cared, probably. He was pretty much just seemed like he was pretty content to be, he was kind of a homebody and didn't really seem interested in that. He liked to make jokes about it, that he would like to get a rich one. And,
gotta pick them right.
Yeah. I made a comment one time. He wasn't feeling real great. He wanted to live independently. I said, well, how about, we have a lot of nice high rises for some of our elderly in our area. And I said, would you want to just go into a smaller apartment, maybe, leave the house and just downsize a little bit? And he said, he was 89 at the time. And he said, well, maybe later in life we'll consider that, later in life. And I said, okay, and I just let it go. I thought, okay. But he said, I just don't think I could live in a high rise. He said, I know how those old women are. They'd be knocking on my door. They'd be bringing me food. And he said, I just don't think I could handle all the attention. So, okay. He was probably right though. Yeah. Who knows? Oh my goodness. He was something.
I hear it does work to their advantage if they need some help.
I think he probably was right. He probably knew. He probably heard stories or something. Yeah, he was not one. I tried to encourage him to go to the senior center. Oh no. Yeah, he's like, no, I know how those women are down there. He just would not go. He preferred my company, after school, it was me. He wanted to go on these little outings. He just wanted to go for rides. He wanted to go get ice cream. He wanted to do our little thing, and that was fine. But there were times when I would be tired or think, oh my goodness, I just want to go home. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm so glad I had those moments. So that's so good.
They're important.
They are.
What impact has the death of your mother had on your life?
At first, I think I used to be more outgoing before she died. In fact, I actually had a job where I traveled and I was doing a computer job where I was training teachers on how to use software in classrooms. And I was rarely home. I basically stayed in hotels, 2-3 nights a week and traveled. And after she died, I felt like I needed stability and I needed to be grounded. I needed something more. I felt like I had no connection to family and friends at home. And I needed that. And so I feel like maybe that she kind of was my security blanket in life. I think I took more risk when she was alive because I felt like I always had this, I could run home and feel safe, and she always had my back. And I felt less secure in a world without my mom. And it's been harder to adjust to that. Even to this day, I think she was my biggest fan. And it's really hard to not have that. It's really hard to not have a mom cheering you on when something good happens and then not have her there when something bad also goes down. And yeah.
And when she was alive, would you talk to her every day, or how often would you talk to her?
I would say, as an adult, yes. Yeah, probably every day, because we lived in the same town, lived in the same community, at least almost every day. Yeah. Even if it was just for a few minutes and all of that, it was really nice. Even when I was on the road, with that job, I would call and check in and say I was safe and doing fine. And so, yes, I think it was about every day. And I'm so glad that I had a very close relationship with her before her death. I was really close. I would say she was probably my best friend before she died. Yeah, that was hard. It was so hard because I could talk to her about all my dating woes and all of that before she died. And that's what I was going through at the time. I was kind of trying to date, and I remember saying things to her I couldn't say to anybody else. And I could trust what she would say. She would just tell me like it is. You know, she was my mom, and I could trust her.
Do you think that, after her death, did you try to date still, or did that just?
No, I did. And I think dating when somebody doesn't know your parent is really weird, because it's like they don't know you. You are removing your history. You are taking a chunk of you that they will never know. And you almost feel like a fraud, or you don't have that to give them. And it feels really odd to try to implement that for them. So for me, it was odd to try to date people that had never met her. And it just felt empty. Anybody that didn't know her that I did date, it just felt really empty for a while. And until I realized that they could know her through stories and photos, and because I was so much like her, there was no reason why I couldn't become parts of her, that I was part of her, and that my dad, they could know my dad, I still had him. And so I tried to focus on they could know her as much as possible. And I tried to let go of some of it as much as I could. And I did that.
Okay. And this is something that we haven't talked about before, but I do see it mentioned just throughout conversations. So when you're meeting new people and they ask you about, oh, well, do your parents live nearby? Or, they ask you about your parent. What is your response?
I'm pretty blunt. I usually just say, I've lost both my parents. And it's kind of a shocker. People
I hate to laugh. I'm so sorry, but
yeah,
I get it.
You probably know. People just, I'm so sorry. And they don't even want to talk to you anymore. It's like, they're like, you're a downer. They just don't have anything. It's like, they just want to run off. It's like, don't have anything in common with you. I got to leave. Or I remember buying a car. That was my last experience. It was kind of humorous, actually. He said something about my family members. I was supposed to list so many family members, and he's like, "Well, I need you to list so many family members that are alive, like mom, dad, grandparent." I said, "I don't have any." I said, "I have brothers and sisters." He said, "No, you don't have any. You don't have a parent. You don't have a grandparent." I said, "None. There are none that are living." And he's like, "You're not that old." And I said, that's my story. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. And he just kind of scared it. It's like it almost scared him. I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. I can write other names down. And he finally said, well, write your sister's name down then or something. But it was just really shocking to watch his face, just like, I'm scared, And I said, something like death is universal. It happens to everyone. And at some point he's like, well, I don't want to think about it. I just don't want to talk about it. Okay. And I think that's the problem. People are very, very uncomfortable talking about it and accepting that it's universal. It happens to everybody. And if we would learn to just be kind and embrace it a little more, maybe it wouldn't be so bad for other people that were hurting. And if we would give people more than 3 days at their job to grieve, that might help too.
Right.
That's horrible. I don't understand in America why we get 3 to 5 days to get over it and we're supposed to move on. That's not enough time.
Yeah. Well, I think that your response to him was actually very kind. I usually just say, oh, they're both dead. And then they're like, oh. Yeah. Here's a shocker for you. Yeah. So yeah. And, I sit here and we laugh through these conversations, and so sometimes I feel like people might think it's not appropriate, but it's our lives. Like this is what we're dealing with. And if we sat here and we were just sad all the time, that would not be beneficial. So sorry for anybody who doesn't like this part of my show, but no, I don't think anybody has any problems with it. I mean, if you're here, you're here. So I think
you're part of the club, right?
Right. We didn't ask to be here, but here we are.
We just got to deal with it.
Yeah. Is there one thing that you would say to your mom now?
Oh gosh.
Or a few things. You don't have to narrow it down.
Oh, the other day I was writing something about that, and I think I said something about would she sing for me? Mm-hmm. You're gonna make me cry. Probably that. I'd probably want to just listen to her sing. Maybe ask her how she feels about me. Like, what does she think? Just tell her I appreciated her, loved her.
Did you get to tell her that you appreciated her while she was alive? I
did. Yeah. Good. And I believe that she could still hear us even before she died. I don't know that for a fact, but her eyes were flickering. I mean, there was a little bit of some sense that there was movement. And so I have this hope that they say that hearing's the last to go. And so I still feel like, and again, my aunt's words were, you gave your mom her flowers when she was alive. And I was good to my mom, and we had a good relationship toward the end of her life. And so I don't have a whole lot. I mean, of course, when I was a teenager, we had our issues and we had our moments, but for the most part, we had a pretty good relationship before she died. And so I'm so thankful for that with her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a lot of, again, sorry, this is not about me, but I have a lot of I don't know what I'd call it, if it's resentment or just feelings towards myself about how I treated her, about myself as a daughter. So, I would call you a good daughter. You called your mom every day and you had a very good relationship with her. So thumbs up on that. Good daughter. Yay. I would give you a good daughter award. How's that?
Yeah, I'll take it because sometimes I feel like I need it. Because there are times I think, I just don't feel like you just go through days where you just feel like, I just don't know if anybody notices anything I do that's worthwhile. You just have those really horrible days, or you just feel like you're invisible because you don't have parents and you don't have that parental guidance of anybody saying anything. And you worry about what's going to happen for the holidays. You worry about what's going to happen for special events or whatever. Or is anybody going to show up for me on something that's going to happen at my work? And you're like, this is things that are kind of cringe worthy because you're like, oh my gosh, I just, you just don't want to do certain things because you don't want to put yourself in those situations. So thank you. Makes me feel good that you think my mom would be happy for me.
All right. So then I want to go back and I kind of want to talk about your dad. I will say also that my dad's name was John.
Oh, okay.
So let's talk about John, and then we'll go into the end questions there. Tell me what happened with Mr. John.
Empty faces, covered in cars, spreading fake skin, passing me by.
Parentless is recorded in Phoenix, Arizona. Find us on social media and any podcast platform. Music provided by Colin Lococo and the Revolving Birds. Studio provided by Fat Kid Productions. Check out one of the many shows available on our network. I'm your host, Stephanie Relaford. Thank you for listening to Parentless.